So, good morning and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today is the third and final episode in our three-part series. It feels like a lifetime ago that we started. It was only about 3 weeks, maybe a month. To those that are joining for the first time, welcome. And to those that are more regular attendees, thank you for supporting us throughout the series. Just as a recap, this is what we've been through. So we started on the 14th of July, and we targeted the API management side of our digital offering, and then we moved into identity and access management, and obviously today we're in, like I said, we're in episode 3. There's still a Thursday session, which is the sort of interactive deep dive. So this isn't the last one, but it's the last sort of formal presentation itself. So the good news is, for those that have not been able to participate in the first 2, is if you navigate to the DARC's website and go to events, you'll be able to pick up on all the recordings and the presentation decks. So you'll see it structured as episode 1, episode 2, and then obviously when we've concluded this, we'll publish episode 3. All those tags that you see there give you the option either to watch the full presentation, which is, varies between an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on which one. Or we've broken them up as well into short presentations of the individual speakers, so you can elect to watch the individual speaker as well. So yeah, like I said, here we are. And being the final episode, it's very exciting, and we've got an awesome lineup for today. So welcome, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy and get value out of it. I'm stealing from Mr. Freemantle. He put this slide up in his first opening presentation on the 14th of July, and I don't think I'll let go of it, and I don't intend letting go of it anytime soon. It's titled WSO2, a full-featured API and integration platform, but it tells the story a little bit differently. And I think if you asked Paul, or certainly any of our senior architects, they could hold your attention for a week on this slide alone. Any digital architect would do well to leverage this as some kind of an architectural blueprint. It really, really covers a broad spectrum of what a business needs to consider when designing a digital architecture. So, one of the things that is really key to this is platform and infrastructure. And this slide talks to it quite nicely, which is why I'm showing it now. So today we're moving into the infrastructure side, and we're focusing specifically on cloud. Again, it's a topic that could get really, really extensive, but the way we've designed it is, to once again, with a slightly different sort of a feel. We're going to start off with Chamith, who's going to present to us the sort of cloud perspective from WSO2, and then we're going to go into another case study from Time Bank with Gino. And then we're really fortunate to have Paul back with us, and Paul is going to wrap the series and do a closing presentation. So which is really nice, because we were fortunate to have Paul open for us on the 14th of July in the first session, and then come in and assist us with a close today and tie it all together. Okay, so buckle up. I think it's going to be a good day. And for those that have been with us for the full journey. Oh, by the way, that's, in case you don't know, that's what everyone looks like. And for those that have been with us for the full journey, you would have been very disappointed if I didn't share with you the sort of journey that we're taking you on. So courtesy of Zoom and glitch free, please. please. 33,945 Ks is today's trip. In London is Paul. Chamith is in Colombo. Today we come from Durban for the first time on the east coast of South Africa, and then still unmoved here in Johannesburg, it's myself. Okay, so I think with that, I would like to hand over to Chamith. Chamith, you're on mute, and Brian, if you can just spotlight Chamith's video for us.
Yep, thank you, Steve.
Cool.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so welcome all to this event. And today I'll be talking about cloud adoption and different trends that are moving around cloud, and finally to end with how WSO2 can ease your adoption effort, and your cloud journey. Okay. So to start off with, I will talk about the evolution aspect of the cloud and how we got to where we are. So as you all know, during the very early stages of civilization, we used to live alongside rivers and water streams. And later, over time with the growth, we moved into the towards the inland, and then going back and forth for water was a trouble. Then we learned to dig wells and build our own water sources and storage water locally. And today we are at a state where water is a service, and it's like there's a massive reservoir, virtual reservoir above us. We subscribe to it. We open the tap and we get water whenever we want. We can subscribe to that virtual reservoir from anywhere, and we pay only for what we use. Very much similar to that, computing in 50s and 60s, computing power was available only at a handful of places like MIT and AT&T Bell Labs. The black and white picture you see here is a photo of the MIT labs. And people had to walk into these labs to get their work done. But later, over time, with the invention of the desktop computer, the computer became a household item. And now we have gone several steps further, and similar to that virtual water reservoir, we have a huge, massive virtual computer above us, and we can subscribe to that from anywhere, and we can send data to that, run all sorts of logic, do all sorts of computations, take the results back, and similar to water, we pay only for what we use. So with that, I will jump into the cloud adoption. So cloud is such a buzzword these days. So why is that? I will talk about costs, business and sales, and the productivity aspects. When it comes to cost, cloud obviously reduced the hardware cost. You don't have to own or run your own data center now. It's all virtual, and you don't have to add, that does not add any fixed cost to your balance sheet. And you just have to pay to that virtual service only for what you use. And licensing cost is a massive cost again, but with the massive usage, the licensing cost in the cloud had shrunken into a fraction of the standard cost, and that comes bundled with whatever the services you use, either for virtual machines, the operating system licensing cost, or for database systems, the licensing cost that comes bundled with that. And that gets applied only for the time that you are using those resources. And obviously, you don't need to have a specialized operations team to run your hardware or to do all the maintenance, do all the managed works, and all the managed services and data center work is completely offloaded to the cloud. So that cost is saved for you. And from the business and sales point of view, cloud introduces rapid innovation, and you don't have to depend on hardware, availability of hardware. Whenever you want to try out something, you just spin up a virtual machine along with some other resources, you do your work, and you can see the results. And that makes the delivery faster. Faster delivery means you develop fast, you invent fast, you develop fast, and you deploy fast. And fast, deploy fast and fail fast makes you, again, going back to the invention cycle, do the development work quickly and deploy fast to the cloud. And all those efforts boils down to the speed to market aspect. And by adopting cloud, your go-to-market speed or the speed to market becomes very aggressive. And then the productivity. Cloud offers variety of services. It offers virtual machine services, database services, broker services, IoT applications, and it covers a whole spectrum of services. And all those are available at your fingertips. And the beauty of that is you can access that from anywhere in the world. And then we'll talk about cloud adoption, some trends that impact cloud adoptions. These are the 4 things that Gartner presented early this year, a couple of trends that impact cloud adoptions. There are some positive impacts as well as there are some negative impacts. So cost optimization is a primary thing. As we go along, you will understand enterprises are spending massive amount of efforts to see how more they can save costs or optimize their usage and eventually save costs. There are lots of services that are natively provided by cloud vendors, such as if you take AWS, there are cost explorers and services like Trusted Advisor, where they always show you what the areas that you can optimize and reduce costs. Because if you just use the cloud in the similar way as you were using your in-house data center, over time you won't be able to see a huge cost difference by adopting cloud. But if you use that mindfully, if you do all the optimization work, if you analyze all the operational data and see where you can optimize more to save more, you will see a huge improvement in your costs to the cloud. And then there's this distribution aspect, cloud distribution aspect, to improve the service quality. Over the recent past, we started hearing this term called MDC, or the micro data centers. Micro data center is a small footprint data center where a single micro data center was built for to cater some special service requirements. For example, if there's a growth, you might already know, like all cloud vendors have different data center, like huge data centers in all parts of the world. But if they see a massive growth or a demand for a particular one service from a particular country or a region, they branch off their data center and create a micro data center in that region, specifically to cater those services. And some examples for such services are IoT services, where latency is a huge concern. So whenever the IoT demand is high, almost all major cloud vendors have branched their data centers and created micro data centers in those areas. Another area would be CDN, or content delivery networks. Again, if you take Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS, they have created micro data centers specifically targeting the CDN service in most part of the world. So that is another. So if you want high latency, so if you're selecting a cloud vendor, that is another aspect that you have to look into, like the service availability or the quality of service that you can get from that particular vendor. And the other aspect is the vendor locking. Vendor locking was, again, initially when the cloud was introduced, this was not a concern at all. But over the recent past, people started thinking about what would happen, where would I eventually end if I depend my business entirely on one particular cloud vendor? What if that vendor go through an outage? How much of an impact that my business would have due to that? So people started thinking along those terms, and vendor locking became a concern over time. And then the only option is to go multi-cloud, pick several vendors, or even if you select a single vendor, go distribute into multiple data centers. Or but the most common thing is try to select multiple cloud vendors and distribute your applications across multiple vendors. But then again, going multi-cloud doesn't mean that your applications will be able to port seamlessly across different clouds, because different clouds provides different service interfaces, and your application should be developed or written in a way that it can portable easily across multiple cloud vendors. And then this is one of the last one, the insufficient infrastructure as service skills was a massive concern, and it's more or less a detractor for cloud adoption. Lots of people, because standard conventional operations and running cloud operations are not the same thing. If you're running cloud operations, that needs to have a different skill set. And lots of people, lots of organizations are still struggling to find that right skill set when it comes to adopting cloud. When I say the skill set, it's mainly the build for failure mindset, because when the moment you start deploying applications into the cloud, everything you design, every single line of code you write has to be focused into that and has to have the fault tolerant capabilities and proper resilient capabilities. So that mindset is very important. And another important skill aspect is the pipelining and automation skills. To get the full advantage or the leverage, full power of what cloud provides, pipelining your development and deployment work and have the right automation is a must. And the operation teams needs to have that skills and capabilities and the mindsets to think through those things before they start the actual development or the implementation work. So these are the main areas that enterprises are thinking through before adopting cloud. So mainly for this, due to this lack of skill aspect, over the time, a massive demand was there. There was the massive demand for managed service providers, and people who are skilled enough or capable enough to run services on cloud, to run applications or deploy applications into the cloud, started getting a higher demand from various enterprises. Let's quickly go through various trends. These trends and numbers were extracted from a report published in last May by O'Reilly and Flexera. So let's go through top cloud initiatives. So if you focus on the first few line items, most number of people are working on cost savings. So that justifies the point we discussed earlier. So cost saving because over time people realized that people who had not done their initial homework, they eventually realized that when you run on the cloud, always figuring out the ways to optimize your usage and then have an impact on that for the total cost or the total spend you do on cloud. That's an ongoing effort. So 73% of the people are continuously putting their efforts on optimizing costs. And then 61% migrating more, offloading more work to the cloud. And the interesting fact is 51% of the people are expanding the use of containers. Container usage is again comes mainly due to two reasons. One thing, it will again help with cost savings, because with containers, you can the effectiveness or the productivity of your hardware usage becomes higher, and then eventually that will end up saving you more money. And the other aspect is again, containerization again is a buzzword these days. So to catch up with the trend, we have seen lots of people moving into containerized platforms. And when it comes to public cloud adoption, AWS is of course leading, but Microsoft Asia caught up a huge market portion over the past few years. Their growth was exponential, and according to Microsoft, over the past couple of years, their growth was above 60%. So one main reason as we see for that growth is people going multi-cloud, and people earlier, they like blindly absorbed whatever AWS offered, and they were like devotees of AWS. But later on, when they figure out this vendor lock-in aspects comes in, they started moving towards other cloud, and Microsoft was a well-known industry lead for decades, and the service and the offering alternative, people picked them as an alternative offering. But the interesting fact here was the Google Cloud. If you look at the experimenting and plan to use Google Cloud, the number of people who are experimenting and planning to use Google Cloud is much higher than all the other public clouds. So one main reason for that is, again, the cost. Google is still growing. It just started, like large enterprises just started adopting Google Cloud. They're not very popular compared to AWS and Asia, but the cost of running your services on Google Cloud is relatively cheaper than AWS and Asia. So that could be one reason for people trying out Google Cloud and planning to migrate their services to Google Cloud. And the other aspect is the trend for containerization we discussed earlier. All the publicly available, all the popular containerized platforms are running Kubernetes as the underneath management service. And Google invented Kubernetes, and they are providing that as a cloud service as part of their Google Cloud platform. So that could be another reason. Majority of the people who are trying out containerized services and moving their applications into containers, they must be adopting Google Cloud as their first choice. So that could be another reason for this 26% and 12% usage of Google Cloud. And the cloud usage due to COVID-19. So it's unbelievable to see soon after we hit COVID-19, how people speed up their efforts on moving into cloud, and how significantly higher they are planning to move into the cloud. So both SMEs and large enterprises have increased their efforts, and they want to move into the cloud, mainly because of this remoteness. And they started feeling, rather than giving standalone services, rather than offering standalone products, industry started realizing the importance of hosted services, and they want to use cloud as the first choice. Okay, so I will just go through cloud operations. When it comes to cloud operations, there are two aspects. One is the server reliability engineering, which was a term introduced by Google, and there's this DevOps aspect. So what are the main differences? Those two are, again, buzzword. DevOps was a buzzword for the past decade, and it was popular. It began popular around over the past 5 years or so. But SRE was a term that we started hearing only in the recent past, but now it's becoming very popular. So the key differences are SRE people are the development people, are the people who write code that are focusing on the operations aspect. And the DevOps people are the operation folks that are focusing on the development concerns. And the main responsibility of SRE is to think of the robustness, the fault tolerantness, how to improve the uptime, how to add an extra 9 to the uptime, and the scalability aspects, how to scale fast, scale up fast, and how to scale down slowly. Think through along those lines and build systems with those capabilities. On the other hand, DevOps people's main responsibility is to take care of continuous integration and continuous delivery, so that they can reduce the time a change that happens on a developer's workstation go through the build process and go through the testing cycles and deploy into the production in a shorter time as possible. At the same time, SRE peoples they are responsible to run analytics. When it comes to analytics, it's not just the application monitoring. It's about performance monitoring. It's about how the hardware work, how to optimize those things, and basically generate all sorts of events and data from the deployment, and then see how they can improve the overall story further. But when it comes to DevOps people, it's all about building environments, infrastructure as code, configuration management, adopting configuration management practices. That is the main responsibility. So these are the major two aspects you have to think through before adopting cloud, and the areas that you have to build skills within your teams. Now I'll talk about how WSO2 can help you along your cloud journey and how we can help you to adopt cloud faster. So obviously, most of you know, we have a cloud compatible as well as the cloud native product stack. All the latest version or product versions we release are 100% compatible with cloud, and the previous versions we released, the earlier versions, are 100% cloud compatible. And there are many success stories of running WSO2 products in the cloud on virtual machines and in containers and on multiple platforms. There are so many success stories around that. And at the same time, WSO2 offers automated cloud installers to make your cloud installation process easy. And we have made it very simple, and using only 3 to 4 steps, you can have a fully featured production-ready cloud setup on all major cloud platforms. So, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes tops. And we are providing config management recipes for Puppet and Ansible for people for DevOps people who want to run configuration management. And at the same time, we are providing infrastructure as code recipes as well for CloudFormation, using CloudFormation for AWS and Terraform for Microsoft Azure. So using these installers and recipes, the time you have to figure out how to build the setup, how to build an environment, and how to deploy WSO2 products into the cloud becomes very less. And with just by following copy and pastable steps that you can find in our documentation, you can get a fully production ready cloud setup in any major platform. So finally, I'll talk about pipelines and managed cloud services that WSO2 offers. We have a pipeline solution that we build targeting virtual machines on, and container platforms. And that pipeline is a fully automated CI/CD flow, comes pre-configured, and it's highly customizable. That means it's a product that built around Jenkins, and we have all the product deployment instructions and all the necessary resources packed around it with support for multiple environments. And it will give you a simple interface here where you need to input where to read your source code and the configurations and whatever the artifacts you want to deploy in the cloud. And the pipeline will figure out how to build and how to test and how to package your artifact into either a virtual machine image or a container image and roll out to the cloud. And it comes with value-added services such as dynamic monitoring and so on. And over the time, WSO2 started using cloud services more than a decade ago. So over the time, we have built a massive group with massive amount of skills around the cloud, around various aspects of the cloud, around writing code to the cloud, around deploying into the cloud, running clouds. And we started this service a couple of years ago. And because we have this skill and we know there's a gap in the market for this skill. And that's why we thought of starting offering this as a service. Managed cloud service means we take the responsibility, WSO2 take the responsibility of running the cloud, running and managing the cloud on behalf of our customers. And that is being carried out by a large number of certified engineers. And we have two offerings, the light offering for small scale deployments and the full offering for massive, complex, large scale deployments. And currently we provide the managed service on top of Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. So I think we have come to an end, and I would like to take questions probably after the session. So thank you for listening and have a nice day.
Thank you, Chamith. Brian, if you can just switch the videos for us. So that was an awesome presentation. I really appreciate that insight, Chamith. I think that we know that the IT industry is a fashion industry. You've made good points in terms of some of the hype and that it's not a silver bullet, and that if you don't know the reasons for doing it and you don't go in eyes wide open, plus with the change in skill sets that are required. So you did well in pointing out that you don't just, if you think you're just going to sort of lift and shift, I think you might be in for some rude awakenings. And I know that Gino is going to pick up on some of those points. Okay, cool. I don't see any questions yet. So Gino, can you just bring your video online? Okay, cool. I can see you. So Brian, if you can just switch across to Gino, then we'll hand over to Gino, who I think is going to definitely pick up on many of the points that Chamith raised there. And here we have a true cloud evangelist from the dungeons of AWS in Time Bank. And look forward to Gino sharing his experiences with us. Over to you, Gino.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to firstly welcome everyone that has joined the past few sessions. The session that Jonathan did, if you were there, he went into a lot of the in-depth story at Time, our mission and what we set out to accomplish. If you didn't manage to catch that session, I highly encourage you to go and have a look at the previous sessions for the entire series. I think it was very informative. But you all showed up here today because you saw the title and you're interested in WSO2, obviously. You're interested in AWS, cloud. But most of all, I hope you're interested in infrastructure as code. And if you're not already, I think my biggest goal here is to get you interested and excited with infrastructure as code. Our story at Time, if you're looking at how to deploy WSO2, there are many, there's quite a bit of documentation out there on how to deploy WSO2. If you're looking at how to deploy WSO2 in cloud, or if you're just looking at cloud in general, there's quite a bit of documentation out there as well. But deploying, the more important thing for me to bring across to you is what we did at Time and how we did it at Time. So before we carry on too much, let me introduce myself. My name is Gino Imbrailo. I'm an integration developer or engineer. I've been working at Time Bank for the past 3 years. My focus was on deploying and maintaining our WSO2 integration platform at Time Bank, which included quite a bit of infrastructure work that I had to do, quite a bit of networking, that type of thing was involved with what I had to do at Time. I was also given the task to deploy the WSO2 integration platform in the cloud at Time in AWS. And then later it was my job to optimize our cloud deployment. So 2 questions to get us going. Why do we use WSO2 as an integration platform? And why the move to a cloud platform? I'm sure you have your own answers to why you use WSO2 as an integration platform, but my answer is I get to do what I do best, and WSO2 takes care of the rest. So if you manage to have a look at Chris Sturney's presentation a couple of weeks ago, you would see that he showcased what developers had to go through in the integration space previously, what developers that were trying to offer web services had to go through. And it's something that I don't think, I personally haven't had to go through it, and I don't want to go through it. And the fact that I don't have to go through it is largely attributed to platforms like WSO2. I can focus on coding, and the integration, WSO2 can focus on that. So my answer to why we moved to a cloud platform is very similar. It's cloud platforms have got managed services, and cloud platforms allow me to do what I do best, and they take care of the rest. So the cloud is a perfect place for my infrastructure because they manage my infrastructure for me most of the time. If my business is in finance or bringing financial services to customers, clients, I don't want to be focusing on my databases. If my job is to code or to integrate, I don't want to be focusing on the operating system that that my servers are using. I don't want to be focusing on the virtual machines that my coder is running on. And that's what we get with AWS. We get that those managed services. So what I also like about cloud is it caters to organizations of all different sizes. So if you are a small organization or you're a one-man band, then you can't focus on everything. Even if you knew how to do everything, you don't have enough time. So the cloud offers you those managed services as your one-man band to get out to market quickly. The same thing with larger organizations, where if you take away focus on what you do, then you're not in for a good ride. You should be focusing on what you offer to your customers and your clients. So you could, instead of having teams, entire teams look after infrastructure, if you move to the cloud, now it starts being looked after for you. So obviously with working in integration, I found that integration and DevOps go hand in hand. Very much how in DevOps, well, in integration, firstly, our main job is to get people or different services talking to each other. In DevOps, our main job is to enable teams in our organization to do what they do best. And what I like about WSO2 and the cloud is those platforms enable me to enable the rest of my organization. So coming back to our personal case, well, firstly, this slide of mine, it looks a little bit biased, but I am biased when it comes to cloud and when it comes to my integration platform. But back to our specific case, when we started deploying WSO2 in the cloud, we did it almost exactly the way we did it on-prem. We did what's called a lift and shift, and we took everything that we had deployed in a data center, and we just took it into the cloud. And we soon realized that that wasn't the best way to go. We weren't getting the full benefit of being in the cloud. AWS, I think I mentioned AWS offers hundreds of services, managed, fully managed services or partially managed services. We weren't making use of a fraction of them, or that fraction was quite small. So we soon realized that we wanted to start making use of all the buzzwords everyone was talking about. We wanted to start using CI/CD pipelines and start managing our deployments using CI/CD pipelines. We wanted some better monitoring on our platform. We get at time we do millions and millions of calls every single day, or we integrate millions of calls every day, or we might be sitting on billions at the moment. But we wanted to get some insights into how our platform was coping with all these calls, what calls were being called the most, and so AWS offers CloudWatch, which could give us some insights into our environment. we wanted to start using automated deployments with our CI/CD pipeline. And very, very importantly, we wanted to start scaling automatically. And it was when we started looking at the automated scaling that we got, it was a bit of a daunting task for us. So being a Time Bank, being a subscriber with WSO2, we saw that WSO2 could provide us with some CloudFormation scripts. CloudFormation being AWS infrastructure as code language. And we went from there. I mean, WSO2 had helped us out quite a bit already there. We just needed to now expand on it, and we needed to tailor and customize those scripts to what we needed at time. So I think the most important part of, or the most exciting thing that came with this was we started using infrastructure as code. So what is infrastructure as code? If you haven't heard about infrastructure as code before, you've certainly heard about it today. You'll hear a lot more about it today, and I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more about it in the very near future. It is the latest and greatest thing in IT. And Chamith mentioned quite a few, his comparison between SRE and DevOps was infrastructure as code starts crossing those boundaries. So infrastructure as code, what is it? It's all in the name. It is your infrastructure as code. So on the screen in front of you, you should be seeing an IDE with there it's 1,655 lines of code, and I've removed a bunch of it already, so it's much longer. But all of this code represents a fully distributed WSO2 API manager. Not just the product, but all the infrastructure behind it. So it represents the auto scaling groups, it represents the virtual machines, the databases, all the networking, so our subnets, our load balancers, it represents security. Everything is defined there. And if I make this 3D, we could say we have this box with all of that stuff defined in this box. And when we open this box, we get all of those services. Everything gets deployed for us. So when we were looking at our infrastructure as code, and we started, our first deployments took about 45 minutes for an initial deployment in the cloud. It was a little bit slow, but we wanted to, well, it was very slow. We wanted to speed up those deployments, and we sped them up quite a bit. So we made WSO2 configuration part of our infrastructure as code. And in doing so, we were able to use so much more of what AWS had to offer us. And we just found that WSO2 and AWS went together like insert your cliched comparison here. So why do we make use of infrastructure as code? I've boiled it down to 3 main points. And those points are speed and agility, flexibility and control, reliability and resilience. So what do we mean by speed and agility? Well, if you look at the picture I got there, it's a picture of a mousetrap. And I find that that picture is the most pertinent when it comes to the word agile. And I think agile is this overused buzzword in the industry. Everyone claims to be agile. Everyone wants to be agile. I can understand wanting to be agile, but it's dangerous to claim you're agile when you're not. Those dangers include, or being agile is being able to change direction at any point. If you're claiming to be agile and your business department thinks they're agile, they're going to want to change direction very quickly or often. And if your development or your IT department is not agile, it's going to take way too long to change direction. It's going to put a lot of people under a lot of strain. So agility is actually continuously improving and deploying new products with a minimal impact on the rest of the business. At Time Bank, we were doing about more than six deployments into production on a daily basis. And that was just our team. A lot of these deployments happened during banking hours, and we were able to, with infrastructure as code, we were able to do these deployments with no impact to the rest of the business. I'm sure a lot of people have heard their change control departments, if you have one, say, well, what's the impact when you discuss your change? What's the impact to production? Well, with infrastructure as code, you can get to a point where you say, well, there is no impact. The other point here is speed. Chamith mentioned it earlier, but from a business perspective, you talk about time to market or speed to market. You want to get your product out as soon as possible. Well, in the developer world, we have the concept of fail fast. You want to bring out a new product, you want to deploy fast, you want to test fast, you want to fail fast, and you want to redeploy fast and follow that whole process over and over again. So with infrastructure as code, you have the ability to do this. You have the ability to not only fail fast, but you can scale fast. So I mentioned our deployments earlier. From 45 minutes, we came down to about 5-6 minutes for an initial deployment of our environment, and about 4 minutes to scale in and out horizontally. And with my personal belief is it's virtually impossible to scale horizontally without infrastructure as code. If you had to ask me to configure and deploy a fully distributed WSO2 API manager, it would take me comfortably, and this is a pat on the back, but it would take me about 4 or 5 days to do it comfortably in my spare time. If you pushed really hard, which I've done before, I could do it in a day. But when it's Black Friday, that day to scale, when your systems are taking strain, that day is way too long. You need to start getting down to hours or hopefully minutes where you can have, where you can start handling the load as it goes up. So yes, we were able to bring it down to 4 minutes, and something where we'd like to go with it is to start using machine learning, which you're able to do in AWS quite easily with CloudFormation. Start using machine learning algorithms to tell us when we should scale before we even know. So that 4 minutes effectively becomes 0 minutes, because my machine learning algorithms are going to tell me, okay, on this day or this day of the week, you have more load, you need to scale, it does it for me. So there is no way I'm ever going to get that right manually. I could never deploy in 4 minutes. I could never know myself when I should be scaling. The next thing we get with infrastructure as code is flexibility and control. So my idea of flexibility is having the world at my fingertips, having pseudo rights or admin privileges on every server that I touch. But obviously that is not reasonable. That is not viable in most industries. So we need to somehow find a balance between flexibility and control. So with infrastructure as code and CI/CD pipelines, we get that. So at Time Bank, we had a CI/CD pipeline that was agreed upon by all the different teams. It was agreed upon by security. It was agreed upon by our management teams and our developers and our engineers. So everyone could do what they wanted within this agreed upon pipeline. So in that way, we got control. So the benefits of infrastructure as code and the benefits of this flexibility and control that we have is your developers start having the freedom or the confidence to start exploring more, because they can build up and tear down entire environments in 4 minutes. So in a sandbox environment, let's just do that. Let's try new things. And your management has the peace of mind to know that their developers are running around doing whatever they want, but they can't go and do anything to bring down production environment, or they can't have a scale out to 1,000 virtual machines and have a massive bill at the end of the month. So yes, flexibility and control, you can do what you want, but only within the bounds that we set out. And then the third point, reliability and resilience. So what is the difference between reliability and resilience? Reliability is having every stage of the deployment working the same every time we deploy in any environment. If I'm sure most of you here have heard a developer say, it works on my local. With infrastructure as code, that will be true. It will work in the developer's local, and it will work the same way in the dev environment. It'll work the same way in a sandbox environment. All the way into production, it will work exactly the same way. So we have this continuity, we have this reliability that no matter what environment we're in, it's going to work the same way. Then resilience is being able to stick to an SLA regardless of unforeseen circumstances. So I'll get into that a little bit. We're going to explore resilience a little bit more now. Resilience, you could boil resilience down to a couple of points. Well, firstly, that guy, he believes in reliability and resilience in this picture. Those rocks have been there for ages, and he's relying that they're not going to fall over if a bird comes and lands on one of them. So resilience, we've got discovery, we've got recovery, we've got improvement, review, and awareness. I've put these points in order of importance to me. I'm a developer at heart, so I don't really care about reviewing or awareness, but we'll go into them anyway. So on discovery, discovering issues in your system is it's a constant process. If you are not out there finding issues in your system, I guarantee you your customers will find the issues in your system. And most of the time, they're going to find that issue on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock when you want to go home. So being able to recover from those issues on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock becomes quite important. It becomes important to me because I want to go home to my wife and children, but most importantly, it's important to a business. And in our case, a lot of people like me are going home and they're paying with their card because they want to put in fuel or they want to buy their takeout or whatever on a Friday afternoon. And at Time Bank, that was very important that those people, when they go and pay with their card, it works every single time. So being able to recover from any problems it becomes super important. How much more important if it's not just any Friday, but it's Black Friday? You want to recover very quickly. With infrastructure as code, you're able to recover really quickly once you've discovered your issue. Those 1,600 lines of code, it becomes simple enough to add 4 lines to that code and recover completely from the issue. It also becomes easy from a disaster recovery perspective, where, all right, the system there's an issue in the system. Let's just bring up an entire new environment. We can and redirect traffic to that new environment. With infrastructure as code, we can do that. We no longer have to rely on developers or engineers logging into specific servers and fixing things. So once we've recovered, we obviously want to improve. And improvement with infrastructure as code is way easier. So next year, Black Friday, those couple of lines of code have been added there. So we've already improved. We're not going to go through the same issues next year. We're able to then review. CloudFormation has got a nice function where it can detect drift. So with CloudFormation, you've told it how your environment should look. In a couple of weeks' time, scaling out or scaling in, your infrastructure will look or might look a little bit different. And with CloudFormation, we can detect that drift, so we can review. And all of these points help create more of an awareness as to what our code does and where possible issues are in our code or in our system. So my last point is the future. So where would I like to see, what future do I see? Well, we already have full stack developers. And if you don't know what full stack development is, it's basically knowing a whole bunch of different technologies to own a development lifecycle end to end. And I understand how to code my application, and I also understand how the databases work behind my application. I would want to see that expand to developers working with their infrastructure, understanding their infrastructure, because they're now using it as code. So I would like to see a world where everything is automated and everything is infrastructure as code. That's it from me. If anyone has any questions, I'd like to answer them for you. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Question? There's a question here, does WSO2 support lambdas? And if yes, what are the benefits? So WSO2 does support lambdas. Obviously, the benefits of lambda functions is running a very small piece of code. Running a very small piece of code over and over and over and not needing to have it on a server. So it becomes very cheap, and you can run those lambdas, and you can expose those lambdas quite easily with WSO2. Sorry, Steve, how is best for me to answer the questions the way I did?
Yeah, I think go through those questions. You can see them on the screen, right? You know?
Yes, I can.
Go through those.
Cool. Another question, what tool do you use for infrastructure as code? So we use, AWS has a tool native to AWS called CloudFormation. We wanted to be as cloud native as possible, so we used CloudFormation. There are more tools like HashiCorp has a tool called Terraform, where you can have your infrastructure as code cloud agnostic. So whatever cloud environment you want to deploy into, you can use Terraform to lay out your infrastructure. So let me just go back to this slide. You can have this is YAML and this is CloudFormation. You can now have a different language with Terraform to deploy your infrastructure as code. And then the latest thing from AWS as well is the CDK, the Cloud Development Kit, where you can start coding your infrastructure as code using whatever your language of choice is. So they've got a CDK for Java, for Python, for JavaScript, etc. I hope that answers your question. Another question here is why did we use CloudFormation and not Terraform? And how did we tackle log insights? So the CloudFormation, I think I answered that a little bit earlier. We used CloudFormation because it was native to AWS, and we tried to be as native as possible when it came to AWS. Our TimeBank is a partner with AWS, so we try to be as native as possible. Log insights, WSO2, as you all know, whatever happens within WSO2, those get shipped to log files on this the file system. What we did is we shipped those logs to an S3 bucket, which is cloud storage, and we had CloudFormation, CloudWatch, which is AWS's monitoring tool or monitoring service. We had CloudWatch pass those logs, and basically that gave us some centralized logging, and we're able to have more insights into our logs using CloudWatch. So please explain, another question here, please explain the relationship between an instance and an AMI. An instance would be a virtual machine. So in AWS, they're called EC2, which is Elastic Cloud Compute, but that's any virtual machine. That's the actual server or slot on a server that you're using. An AMI is, it's called an Amazon Machine Image. An AMI is the image of what's running on top of that EC2 instance. So you could take a snapshot of your your OS in its current state, and you can then, every time you create a new virtual machine, you could create it with that image. So every time a new virtual machine comes up, it comes popped up with whatever was installed on it. So we used AMIs in our case that were that had WSO2 pre-installed on those AMIs and pre-configured, so that when we scaled, and that's how when we scaled in and out, WSO2 was already there and already running. So it made scaling much faster. Does WSO2 provide a benefit over native AWS? Yes. WSO2, I'm assuming that that you are talking, I'm going to assume you're talking about something like the API manager. The API manager or the WSO2 API manager versus native AWS, it offers you a better control over the life cycle of an API. So versioning of that API, having users able to use different versions of the same API, and also the API store, having an API store that you can have people log into your store, see what APIs you have available. That is a great benefit as well of WSO2.
But there's no more questions, so you got hounded there. Good job, well done. Thank you. Sure. We can also pick up in the Q&A at the end of the session. So I think, Brian, if we can transition the video across, we're now going to hand over to Paul, who's going to do our closing wrap for us. So once again, thank you, Gino.
Pleasure.
Brian, if you are there. There we go. I think I can see Paul's screen.
Hey, Steve, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Over to you, Paul.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
So, this has been a really interesting set of sessions, and I think it's been really valuable. I've really enjoyed taking part, but I've also really enjoyed listening to the other presentations. The case studies have been really valuable, and I really want to just wrap up with a few thoughts. And I think the themes we had about API management, identity management, and cloud were really valuable because they all come together in building, I think, that the new business models and the digital transformation that is going to drive all of our efforts over the next, year, 5 years, 10 years, and even 20 years, So it's an exciting day today. Today is WSO2's 15th birthday. We founded the company exactly 15 years ago today. And, in that time, we've seen some things really remain the same and some things change massively. So the things that have remained the same is that we set up WSO2 around a vision of building a global company. So not just a US-based company or a UK-based company or a Sri Lankan company, but a genuine global company. We set WSO2 up around open source, and we set WSO2 up around the idea that applications were going to be built across networks. Now that name has changed. That was called service-oriented architecture. Now it's called cloud and APIs. But fundamentally, that idea that we're building applications out of genuinely distributed systems, and that is the default was our vision, and that is exactly where we are today. And I think we've gone further than that. What's really interesting is that, we had this vision back in the early 2000s of web services. And that vision was that there would be genuine network available services that people could buy and utilize. And that is exactly what APIs as products are, is exactly that vision. And you know, the technology has changed from SOAP to REST to GraphQL to gRPC to WebSockets, but the fundamental concept is absolutely there. And in my initial talk back a few weeks ago, I talked about these different business models that are emerging from APIs as products, where APIs start to be resold, reused, and start to create new ecosystems. And I'm not going to dive into that. You know, if you didn't catch it, then there's the two resources. One is there's a webinar I gave about it, which you can find there, and the second is obviously the talks that that I gave last time. But I think this is really interesting, is this idea that we are changing the actual business models. We're no longer just the IT guys, you know, helping build out what the business guys have thought of. We're actually driving business models through new technology and new approaches. And I think that's a really exciting place to be. And you can't do these multi-party business models without knowing who your customer is. You need to secure access, but beyond that, you need adaptive authentication and strong authentication. And those are really key parts, for example, of our open banking stack, which allows banks to use strong customer authentication, use multi-factor authentication, and adaptive authentication, where we actually take on board the context of this request. Is this the first time someone's logged in today, or is it the 10th time they've tried to log in within 5 seconds? You know, those are very different. Is this the same IP address that's logged in 100 times before? Is it an IP address that's been used for 100 attacks before? And then once we've got that identity, then we need to apply policies and access controls. And increasingly, those are flexible controls such as OPA. Yeah. We want to track customer interactions. So we want to integrate that identity access management with our CRM system and with other systems. So this is no longer just a piece of the technical puzzle. It's now part of the business process. When someone logs in, that's engaging with your customer. Of course, we need to manage consent. And again, that's a big part of our open banking stack and our customer identity access management system. One really interesting thing is, you know, this world is no longer homogeneous, and WSO2 is at the heart of helping to build ecosystems around open source and open standards. And working with third-party identity systems is a big part of what we want to do, need to do, and can do. And we were the first company to really offer a federated identity bus, which allowed token swapping, which allowed you to take a token from Facebook, Google, GitHub, and turn it into a different type of token that's consumed by Salesforce or SAP. Provisioning identities is a really important point, because we want to onboard customers. We don't want to just work with the existing customers. We want and need to be able to onboard new users, new customers. And I think a really important point of identity management and where customer identity management is going is that we don't just want to support IT operations with this. We need to support developers as well. It's absolutely essential that developers learn that they have the power to use identity intelligently, that they can embed identity into new offerings in a consistent way that works with the rest of the enterprise, but gives them the power to do all these things that I've talked about above. And, you know, I talked about emerging supply chains for API in finance, and these three things of APIs, cloud and identity are absolutely central to, for example, the story we heard on the first session about Flash. Flash are basically creating a new financial product which they sell in interesting ways and develop in new ways. And the ability for the whole open banking movement relies on cloud and federated identities and consent management, strong customer authentication to enable all of these new supply chains. And I think that's really interesting. And then today we really focused on cloud. And I think, Gino and Chamith really identified strongly, what are the why cloud, what is it about cloud that we're after? And I think some really interesting themes come out, so repeatability is absolutely essential. That ability to create DevOps and infrastructure as code is, and to create your whole stack as code is absolutely valuable. Speed to market, the ability to get there faster. When we started WSO2, I remember a project with Deutsche Bank where we built a production system in a month for them. And then they said, well, unfortunately, it's going to take us 6 months to provision the hardware for this system to run on. To just get one server into a data center was going to take them 6 months. Now you can provision a cloud in a minute or 3 minutes. You can actually get a whole Kubernetes cluster up in 5 minutes on Google. So now the challenge is on us as development environments and to speed up development to keep up with cloud, which I think is really cool, the way that's swapped. I think, Gino really put it clearly, that you want to build environments where you can focus on what you're good at and get someone else to focus on what they're good at. And cloud is definitely that. The site reliability engineering and DevOps enablement that AWS, Azure, Google, and other clouds provide are incredible. And, that's really important. And so where does WSO2 fit in that? So obviously we offer our managed cloud services. And what that's really saying is we are good at providing the next layer on top of AWS or Azure, but also we're good at managing our own software. So if you want to really focus on your core competencies, we can also help by managing the cloud instances, upgrading the servers, doing a blue-green deployment, and helping you set up a CI/CD pipeline that's tuned to WSO2 software. And I think a really key question came out at the end, what is it that WSO2 offers that AWS or Azure don't? And what we offer is an outstanding experience in building APIs, integrating with systems and identity management. And our software in each of those environments is way, way ahead of those offered by AWS, Azure, or Google. Google with Apigee is probably the closest to having a strong offering, but they don't have a strong identity management offering. They don't have a strong integration offering. So, we have a significant thing, and also, I hate to say it, but a lot better value than Apigee, and that actually enables you to be more innovative as well. Another aspect of cloud I think is really important is pay-as-you-go. I'll talk about that in a minute. The scale is obviously a key aspect that you can scale up and down. So speed to market is kind of scaling from 0 to 1. And then what I call scale is scaling from 1 to n and n to 1. And finally, I think it's really important that we enable innovation. I work with all sorts of companies, large and small, traditional and startups. And, the reality is that even in large traditional companies, innovations are key. If you are a Fortune 500 bank, and maybe you seem to the rest of the world like you move slowly, but innovations within that system can optimize massively. You know, if you are that size, a small innovation can save you millions a year. And I really want to talk about this shift to cloud native. So cloud native to me is the confluence of the container movement with the API movement. So in other words, building network connected systems that are created out of small, highly agile cloud systems. And I take a little bit of credit. So I was one of the very first people to blog about cloud native 10 years ago this year, and you can still find that blog up on my website. And we weren't talking about containers and Kubernetes in those days. We were talking about PaaSes and all sorts of other technologies, but the core concepts, I think, were still the same. Of building systems that are inherently cloud ready creates a new kind of agility. And so we've seen this shift from virtual machines to containers and Kubernetes. We've seen a shift from center of excellence based integration to API led decentralized integration. We've seen a shift from APIs just being for partners to being APIs everywhere. We've seen a shift from a single edge API gateway to edge gateways and micro gateways working in concert. We've seen a big shift from synchronous request reply to event driven asynchronous systems. And a big part of WSO2's offering is that we have a streaming real-time integration platform that supports WebSockets, it supports Kafka, it supports Rabbit, and it enables you to build real-time integrations out to partners and internally, and I think that's really important. There's been a big shift from heavyweight systems to lightweight, decoupled, and deploy anywhere. There's been a shift from script-based deployment to GitOps. And you know, I said at the beginning that one of our core tenets was open source, and I think this is a big shift in the shift to cloud native, is that, you know, of course, proprietary licenses are going to move into the cloud world, but there is a big shift to say we're gonna look at open source by default, and you can see that across this whole world. You know, Kubernetes has created a whole raft of new open source projects. Prometheus, the CNCF has launched 100 new things, and this is I think a big part of the world. And finally, pay up front to pay as you go, and this is also to do with licenses. And WSO2 has very much taken this on board and built a set of licensing and subscription models that are really enabling you to optimize your cost based on usage, and which I think is really, really important part of this story. And I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts about the bigger picture as you do a digital transformation. And you know, the Agile Manifesto has some really interesting aspects to it. And one of those is this idea that the best architectures come from self-organizing teams. And, you know, we all know the two pizza rule that Jeff Bezos made very famous. The idea that you should never have a team that you can't feed with two pizzas. Now, I haven't had a pizza in South Africa. I had a very nice set of meals last time I was there, but I didn't unfortunately get to taste your pizza. But in England, unfortunately, our pizzas are quite small, and a two pizza rule would be a team of two, because basically one pizza feeds one person. But in the US, where this comes from, the pizzas are pretty big. So a typical two pizza team is between, you know, is like, say, 6 to 10 people. And there's some science behind this. So Jennifer Muller from Wharton Management School did research, and she found that as team sizes grow, you get this thing called relational loss. And this is fundamentally that the team gets too big, and people don't know each other, they can't trust each other, and therefore their productivity goes down. And Conway, back in 1967, Martin Conway postulated this law called Conway's Law. And he said that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. So Eric Raymond put it better. He said, if you have 4 groups working on a compiler, you'll end up with a 4-pass compiler. And, you know, for a long time, I wasn't a manager, I was a young programmer, and I knew about this, and I used to blame management for messing this up. But I soon realized that, you know, you cannot fight culture and you cannot fight human nature. So this is really an aspect of human nature. It's the way our brains work. It's the biological, it's thousands of years of evolution have built us into this model where we work really effectively in small bands, you know. And so we kind of took this on board, and Asanka and I came up with this concept called a cell-based reference architecture. And this is really about a way of organizing which is not fighting Conway's law. It's saying, well, okay, I accept Conway's law, so I want to structure my organization in the same way that I want my design structured. And that's really what a cell-based architecture is about. And I really urge you to take a look at this paper. It's been getting some very interesting traction recently, and I think it's got a lot to say, not just for the next few years, but as we push out into a cloud, API, and federated identity world. And that also led us to build a key white paper, which is about our reference methodology. This is about how an organization shifts their people, processes, and technology to become more agile, more decentralized, more cloud ready, and more self-organized. And again, I think this is really worth a read. So please. And by the way, these are, you know, just like everything else, these are open source. So these 2 papers are both on GitHub. They're both under a Creative Commons license. And if you have improvements or suggestions, we'd really accept pull requests on those. Not just really, but readily accept pull requests on those. So I think if you are moving on this digital transformation journey, then you do need these 3 foundations. You need a flexible cloud environment, and we talked about the reasons for those. You need an API-led integration strategy, helping you evolve and build API products that are going to be the bedrock of your digital transformation. And you need to be able to offer those to customers via multiple channels, web, mobile, but also this new concept of B2B2C. So in other words, business to consumer. So not just offering your new products, your digital products directly, but indirectly through your ecosystem with federated managed identity. And, you know, Steve gave a very nice overview of our product line, so I'm not going to go into that today. But, you know, I'm really convinced that this is a key enabler, and when you put it together with AWS Azure, WSO2's managed cloud, and the expertise and capabilities of our partners like DArgs, then you start to get a true foundation for digital transformation. And I can't show you this, which is why it's blurred out, but possibly later today, certainly this week, Forrester is launching their next API wave. They're also launching later in the year a customer identity access management wave. This is their review. So Forrester took a look at all the major companies providing API management solutions, including AWS, Azure, MuleSoft, Software AG, IBM, Google, Axway, pretty much everyone in the space. they do an incredibly detailed analysis. They give us a questionnaire with hundreds of questions on it. They give us a demo script with only 1 week to prepare, and it's a huge demo script, and we just managed to demo everything they require within 3 hours, and it's literally bang, 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 quick, show me this, show me this, show me this. And we were, in last year's Forrester API Wave, we were leaders, but we were right on the edge of the leadership quadrant, and without giving too much away, I think you're going to find us right in the middle of the leadership quadrant with a very strong rating this year, right up there with Google, IBM, and the other 4 leaders in this space. So I'm very excited about that, and I think that's a nice birthday present for WSO2. And I want to leave you with this final thought, which is that what we are doing with cloud, with APIs, with federated identity, with customer identity access management, is we are building not just a system. We're not just saying, here is a banking app, a mobile app we need, here is a solution we need. We're building a framework, we're building an environment in which we can adapt, in which we can create new products quickly, improve products, understand the market and react to it. And you know, to quote Charles Darwin, it's not the strongest of the species that survives or the most intelligent, it's the one that's the most adaptable to change. And that's really what we believe that everyone needs to do on their journey to digital transformation, is to build the adaptability. That is your key challenge. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
I've got, I have a grin from ear to ear. It was a privilege. Paul, thank you so much. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you and to WSO2.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions? I'm jealous of Gino, who had a good crowd of questions. Are there any questions from today or from my earlier session that anyone has? Well, if there are no questions, then I just want to do one thing, which is to really thank all the people who were involved in this set of sessions. So Steve has put a huge amount of work into this. I know he's been setting up preview sessions, organization, making sure all the presentations were there, getting all the technology. We've had a huge amount of help from Brian at WSO2 in the technical front and getting all the Zoom sessions ready and so forth. And of course, we've had an amazing set of speakers throughout the sessions, and really great content, really interesting case studies, deep dives into technology, and as Steve said at the beginning, that ability to go from the high level vision down to the gory details has been, I think, a great part of this series of talks. So I'd really like to thank everyone who was involved. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Paul. I don't see any questions now, so I think then that just leaves for me to give the reminder that on Thursday at 9 o'clock, hopefully you've got your invitations for those that have registered. If not, let us know. Gino will be available. I'm not sure if Chamith will join us, possibly. But the idea, like with the previous ones, is for us to make a deep dive available to look into, to ask questions, to get very interactive from a Q&A perspective. So feel free to join us for that. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you for the early show, Paul. I'm also grateful for that. We'll be looking out for that Forrester Wave report. That sounds good. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.